In this video, I'm taking 3 of your favourite childhood toys and transforming them into terrifying horror movie posters. We begin with none other than the infamous Robo Sapion. This little robot could dance and... well, that was about it. But what if we gave it a slight little upgrade? First of all, let's get rid of this remote. Trust me, I don't think we'll be needing one. Next, I whipped out my trusty pen tool and began tracing around the robot's body, one chunk at a time. To get a clearer picture of what I was doing, I filled each piece with a solid colour, and then headed over to Envato Elements to hunt down the perfect gritty metal texture. Affiliate link in the description. Once I had the clipping mask in place, it was time to slap on some shadows and finally give these flat layers a bit of depth. The base shape stayed pretty true to the original Robo Sapion toy. I wanted to keep that silhouette familiar, however adding a few extra parts later on to give a guy a little upgrade. For the joints, I used a different texture altogether. This patterned image gave it a bit of a mechanical detail. I did have some fun with some cheeky warping on these parts to create those bendy joint sections, just enough to make each component feel functional, and once the shadows were added, it really started to take shape. I didn't quite realise it at the time, but this whole layering and shading process, this was basically my full-time job for the next 5 hours. No complaints though, as it was actually quite addictive bringing each 2D chunk to life. So what exactly were we turning this poor innocent Robo Sapien into? Well, my idea was to create a poster for a dystopian sci-fi horror film set in the aftermath of an AI apocalypse. But Ty, isn't that just essentially the Transformers franchise? Well no, silly, because this film actually follows a teenager named Sam Witwicky who discovers that his car is actually an alien shape-shifting robot. For the face, I had to bring in the big guns, the Terminator. Specifically, those glowing red eyes. I blended them into the design using some layer styles and then added a shadow above to make them feel tucked under the helmet. I also threw on this armoured faceplate as I really like the idea that this robot was built for war and therefore covered head to toe in militant armour. Then back to it, and yep, you guessed it, more shadows, and more shadows, and more shadows. This part got a little bit repetitive, but oh my god, it was satisfying. A few hours in and I was really getting into the rhythm of shaping each part with lighting and shading. At this point, I couldn't help but sneak in a bit of storytelling. So I used this painted skull graphic across the robot's chest, like he's part of some greater army of evil machines. For the final touches, I added this electrical cord to the arm for some bonus detail, plus a few war scars for good measure. I then generated this scene of an apocalyptic New York City, but I had to get rid of this random human in the foreground. Sorry pal, but this is robot territory now. A few last shadows and some highlights, but this time using an exposure layer to match the background lighting. And then I coloured it to reflect the fire behind, well, was behind, now absolutely engulfed in flames. Eventually I decided Earth just isn't doing it for me anymore, so naturally I took the action to space. The name Robo Sapion felt strong enough to be the title. I added this little spike graphic inside the text to represent their highly illegal, extremely pointy weapons of mass destruction. A couple of final sci-fi overlays, a little touch up here and there, and we've got ourselves a full-blown dystopian horror movie poster. I think it came out pretty cool. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Now the next toy is already a little bit unsettling to begin with. Everyone's favourite knockoff gremlin, the Furby. Now, somehow they were still being produced in 2016, and just look at this, that is some evil sh. First up, I had to remove the background. I tried a few different techniques because I wanted to keep that soft feathered outline around the fur nice and fluffy. And as terrifying as the face already is, we're gonna remove it. Much better. Now, with a faceless ball of fluff, I wanted to switch up the colour to something a bit more exciting and monstrous. I found this image of some cat eyes that I think could work well, so I just erased the rest of the image and installed the eyebrows of this rather happy looking fella. Now it's time for some quick therapeutic blending. Just gently dabbing around with the eraser tool until a Furby starts looking like some demonic Build-A-Bear. For the mouth, I originally went for this carnivorous looking bird beak to replicate the beaky looking mouth on Furbies. However, you'll see in just a sec how I did decide to change to something a little less birdie. I then had a quick play with some shadows to start bringing a more darker tone to the creature. And here's that friendly set of teeth I just mentioned. Once I started blending in these teeth, our creature really started looking rather terrifying. Then using the warp tool, I shaped the mouth into a sinister smile and topped it off with this wolf nose. Now I thought the feet could be like these sort of pig trotters, as I'd imagine this creature would be on all sorts of rough urban terrain waiting to eat some unsuspecting bin men or something. I decided the ball of fluff on his head was a little too friendly, so I swapped it out for an image of overgrown grass. Still a nod to the original Furby silhouette, but much more monstrous. I decided to incorporate this little cloud shape that is seen on all the Furby's heads, but instead designed it like a metal plate bolted into the skull like a twisted bit of branding from some shady toy factory. And of course our evil man-eating monster needed a healthy dose of blood-stained teeth. For the background, I jumped on mid-journey and generated an image of a dimly lit abandoned factory to suggest the toy origins of these creatures. Once I landed on the right image, I extended the background with generative fill, and then used an exposure mask to control the lighting, highlighting key areas to match where the beams of light would naturally hit and the darker areas in which the shadows would cast. The concept that I had in mind was this box, which was once heavily bolted shut and hidden from the world, had been violently forced open, and now the Furby is stepping through beams of fire and light like a gateway to hell has just been unleashed. After that, it was just a few final touches, some colour grading, a little extra shading, and a Furby horror movie poster was done. This one definitely leans more into classic horror territory, deep blacks, blood reds, and a ghoulish looking evil creature. Let me know what you guys think. Alright, so our movie poster wall is nearly complete. However, we just have one more toy to design from. Sylvanian families. This one was my girlfriend's choice. Let's destroy them. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I definitely felt a bit like Sid from Toy Story at this point, just going in with the burn tool, roughening up these poor little rabbit guys until they looked properly weathered. My original plan was to create something in which they looked sort of stranded on a desert island after a plane crash, but I ended up pivoting to a Twister-inspired concept instead. I imagined this massive hurricane tearing through a quiet Western-style town, and weirdly, the rabbit's clothes sort of gave off that exact vibe anyway. I wanted the poster to feel a little aged, like the movie was set decades ago. So I laid on some vintage photo textures to really sell that retro film look. Definitely a quicker, less intense piece to end on, but I actually really like how different it feels. It's kind of like if Fantastic Mr. Fox was thrown into the middle of Twister. And just like that, our movie poster wall is complete, with every film now screening. The only question is, which one are you buying a ticket for? If you enjoyed this video, then check out this one where I designed an entire theme park exclusively for dogs.